We start with COVID as cases climb and vaccination numbers fall. The nation's largest county is now bringing back a major restriction.
Starting this Sunday, people in Los Angeles County will have to wear masks indoors, even if they're vaccinated. Health officials are tying this new rule to the rise in cases. It is clear the Delta variant is now a nationwide challenge. The most recent CDC numbers show nearly 60% of all new COVID cases are coming from this strain. NBC News health and medical reporter Erica Edwards is following the latest on the pandemic again for us this morning. So, Erica, throughout the pandemic, L.A. has been one of the first places to implement restrictions, one of the last to remove them. So maybe this isn't terribly shocking, but what more can you tell us about this new mask mandate for L.A. and really the state of the Delta variant and COVID cases there?
Hey, Joe, good morning. That mask mandate goes back into effect this Sunday morning. The announcement follows 6 straight days of more than 1,000 new COVID-19 cases per day in LA County. Just yesterday, that number was more than 1,500. That's the highest it's been since March. Now, just yesterday, during a news conference on Thursday, the Los Angeles County health officer said this is an all hands on deck moment.
Wearing a mask when indoors with others reduces the risk of getting and transmitting the virus. Masking indoors must again become a normal practice by all, regardless of vaccination status, so that we can stop the trends and level of transmission we're currently seeing.
The vast majority of COVID-19 cases, of serious COVID-19 cases, still remain among those who are unvaccinated. Joe?
So, Erica, the variant's getting a chance to spread more because of a lag in vaccinations, especially in certain parts of the country. What are federal health officials saying about this right now?
Right. So because the Delta variant spreads so easily, it actively seeks out those who are most vulnerable to infection. That is, those who remain unvaccinated. And getting that second dose of vaccine seems to be really important in stopping the spread of the Delta variant. Now, last night, the head of the CDC, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, spoke with our colleague Lester Holt about the situation. She said the CDC is actively reaching out to areas of the country with high transmission and low vaccination rates to encourage those shots.
We knew that this was going to be harder as time went on. Places with low rates of vaccination are actually seeing more disease, and we're really trying to go there now to say, please, we don't want to hit that worst case scenario.
Dr. Walensky stressed one more time that the vaccines are highly effective in preventing the most serious forms of the illness, including hospitalization and death. Joe?
Yeah, and Erica, speaking of vaccines, we now have an idea of when kids under 12 might be eligible for the vaccine. When could that happen?
So Pfizer is still aiming to release its data on the ages 6 to 11 sometime in September. As for Moderna, they're expecting data on that age group sometime later this fall. Based on that timeline, it's going to take the FDA then a while to sift through all of those documents. The agency actually has asked for more follow-up safety data for kids than it did for adults. Yesterday, an FDA official told me that they suspect potentially a midwinter vaccine if all goes well. Now, the data on babies and toddlers is expected after that, more like October, November, putting a potential vaccine for that youngest age group further into 2022.
Well into next school year. All right, Erica, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
In Mississippi, the virus is spreading through that population once thought to be relatively safe. Children, currently 7 kids in the state's only children's hospital, are in the ICU with COVID. 2 of them are actually on ventilators. The highly contagious Delta variant is tearing through communities with low vaccination rates. And as you can see on this map, Mississippi and Alabama rank 49th and 50th nationwide in getting people shots. Parents have until Monday to start vaccinating their children, 12 and up, of course, to make it in time for back to school. NBC News correspondent Ellison Barber joins us now from outside Children's of Mississippi in Jackson. Ellison, good morning. So first, just tell us about these 7 children. I mean, it's a relatively low number. We got to keep that context, but 2 of them are on ventilators. How are they doing and how are they being treated?
Yeah, and sort of the way to look at those numbers is kind of what percentage of total COVID patients hospitalized are they making up. At this hospital, they have 5 children that are hospitalized right now, needing intensive care because of COVID-19. You had Mississippi State Health Director warning people that there were 7 children in intensive care, 2 of them on ventilators statewide, again, all because of COVID-19. And when you look at the number of people who are hospitalized and intensive care because of COVID-19, that number, 7 children, that means that they make up approximately 7% of people hospitalized in intensive care because of COVID-19 in the state of Mississippi. And that is relevant because at this hospital, they say that that is a percentage that is higher than what they saw last summer when they were really at the peak of this pandemic. So in that context, they say it's really concerning. This children's hospital, it is the only children's hospital in the state of Mississippi, but it is part of a larger medical system here. It's one of the largest hospitals in Mississippi, University of Mississippi Medical Center. And they have, other hospitals as well. And they say that they have seen an uptick in patients they are treating because of COVID-19 just across the board. When you look at the numbers here in Mississippi, hospitalization rates have steadily increased since the beginning of July. And in the last week and a half, the number of patients in intensive care units because of COVID-19 has nearly doubled. Doctors here are begging people to get vaccinated because in this state, most people have not. Listen here.
I recognize that people don't like being told what to do, but we also, as a society, are told what to do for a lot of things. We pay taxes. We have to get vaccines before we go to school. We have to get car tags. So there are a lot of things that we're used to doing because we know we have to do. And this, to me, is more about responsibility for society.
And what's significant, too, about the number of children in this particular hospital is that all of them are under the age of 12, which would mean that they are not eligible to get vaccinated right now. And when I ask doctors, how do you make sure that that age group in particular stays protected? They say the answer is that when they're they're inside around other children, other adults, they're wearing face masks, and that the adults and teens who are eligible to get vaccinated around them are vaccinated. So it creates a bubble to keep them protected as well. Savannah?
Yeah, that might be a pretty good indicator of what we're looking at come school year is still wearing masks for children in classrooms. Ellison, it strikes me there that doctor that you were just talking to, Dr. Jones, that we heard from, he said people don't like to be told what to do. And I kind of wonder just if that has anything to do with the lack of vaccination in that state. I mean, it's next to last in the nation for vaccination rates. What are medical professionals trying to do about that?
Yeah, well, when I was talking to these doctors, and we spoke to 3 different doctors, including the head of the pediatric unit here, and they all talked about how frustrating it was. One said that she feels like people are referring and deferring to Facebook posts instead of doctors, people who normally they trust to treat cancer, to tell them what vaccines they need for their children to go to school, and to treat any serious illness that they have. But for whatever reason, they're not trusting them here. And they said it is really, really frustrating because they are trying to combat just a sea of misinformation, and they're doing the best they can, but it constantly keeps coming up. And they say there's some disconnect here that they honestly are having trouble reconciling as to why people are choosing to trust what they see on Facebook over doctors who are from Mississippi, live in Mississippi, raise their children in Mississippi, and who are normally people they trust for other advice on health issues, why they're not listening to them here. So what they're doing is they're just trying to get the message out again and again. But these vaccines, they are available and they are widely accessible at this point. Savannah?
Yeah, Ellison, actually, a warning we heard from the Surgeon General yesterday about misinformation, particularly spotting on platforms like Facebook. Ellison Barber, thank you so much. Now to the fight over voting rights on Capitol Hill. Texas legislators are continuing their whirlwind tour, meeting with senators in Washington to advocate for federal voting rights. Washington was the scene of a voting rights protest Thursday, where 9 people were arrested, including the Democratic representative who chairs the Congressional Black Caucus. We have a team lined up to cover every angle. NBC News Now correspondent Priscilla Thompson is at the Texas State Capitol in Austin. Correspondent Leanne Caldwell is in Washington. Hi there. Good morning to you both. Leanne, I'll start with you. So just first, tell us more about the protest on Capitol Hill. What exactly were the activists protesting? What were they saying? What were they asking for? And tell us about these arrests, who was arrested, and what ultimately led to that.
Good morning, Savannah. So this was a day of protest in favor of voting rights. So this is part of a larger action over the past weeks and months, really, to try to force the Senate to take up voting rights legislation. Of course, they did last month, but it was blocked by Republicans. And so activists aren't going to stop. This is coordinated with the Texas Democratic lawmakers who are here in Washington to lobby members of Congress. Now, 9 people were arrested yesterday. They protested in the atrium of one of the Senate office buildings, which is illegal to protest there. So Capitol Police said that they gave them 3 warnings, and then finally they had to escort them out in handcuffs. But these activists say that they are not going to back down and that they're going to continue to pressure the Senate to act. Savannah.
Priscilla, the Texas Democrats have had a whirlwind week in D.C. Give us a quick recap of what's happened and also tell us how did their meeting with Senator Manchin go yesterday? Because let's be honest, he's really the key to a lot of things they want.
Right, Joe, that was a very important meeting to them yesterday. And we know that everyone in that meeting appeared to be in agreement that something needs to happen on voting rights and some sort of legislation. And what they agreed on is that it may need to be a more narrow focus than what those Texas Democrats were originally lobbying for, which was the For the People Act or the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Another thing that we know did not come up in that conversation is the filibuster. Texas Democrats effectively said that plenty of people are talking with Senator Joe Manchin about the filibuster. And while they had mentioned the possibility of a carve out or even eliminating the filibuster altogether, they decided it was best for that conversation to focus on the things that they could come to an agreement to. The big question now, though, is timing. When might there be movement on this? Because, of course, Democrats are going to have to come back here at some point to likely vote on these bills. Joe, Savannah?
Now, Priscilla, we've talked a lot about these Democratic senators from Texas who came to D.C. this week, the dramatic fashion in which they left on these charter jets. But actually, they didn't all leave. And I know you spoke to some Democratic lawmakers there in Austin who decided to stay in the state of Texas. What'd they tell you?
Yeah, we spoke with Representative Eddie Morales. He represents a number of communities along the U.S.-Mexico border here. And what he said is that while he does not support this voting legislation that would be more restrictive, and he supports his colleagues who are in Washington, D.C., he made a promise to his constituents to work across the aisle. And so he stayed to do that and to foster bipartisanship, but also to keep an eye on what was going to be happening here at the state capitol while his colleagues were away. Take a listen to a little bit of our conversation.
I made clear that I was very supportive, and just everyone fights a different way. And my way of fighting was to stay on the House floor and make sure that no shenanigans took place. As some tried, they tried to strip some of the committee some of the representatives in their committee memberships, their titles, and they wanted to assess penalties also, but we were able to stop that.
And while Republicans were unable to strip committee leaders of their titles, the Speaker of the House yesterday did remove the Speaker pro tem, Democratic Representative Joe Moody, from his position, something that the Speaker has the power to do under House rules. Savannah, Joe.
Leanne, switching gears, I want to ask you about the infrastructure plans on the Hill. We know Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer set an aggressive timeline for both the bipartisan and the Democrats-only plans. So Republicans are pushing back because the bipartisan bill isn't even done yet. What's Schumer's goal here?
Schumer has a bit of a problem, and that is time. Most people think, wait, it's only July. There's a lot of time left in the rest of the year, but legislatively there is not. Congress is out for most of August to meet with their constituents to campaign. The end of September, there's a rush of funding bills to fund the government. So they have a lot of things to do between now and the end of the year. And let's face it, the closer you get to an election, the harder it is to pass legislation. And Schumer is very aware of this. It takes a lot of time to pass one piece of legislation on the Senate floor. And he knows this, so he's trying to put pressure on these lawmakers to wrap up their negotiations so they can get moving on actually voting on it.
All right, Leanne, thank you so much. And Priscilla, who's been up before the sun for like the whole week for us, thank you so much for your great reporting down there.
Rescue efforts in Germany are continuing after flash floods left villages underwater. More than 100 people are dead. Another 1,300 are unaccounted for. Officials say the country hasn't seen this kind of rainfall in more than a century. Sky News' Michelle Clifford reports.
In Western Germany, the army have been brought in to deal with the aftermath of the devastating floods. Residents in Hagen forced to flee their homes after the River Volm burst its banks.
Oh my God!
The sheer force of the floods swept away anything in their path. In Altena, locals watched on, unable to do anything as floodwaters streamed down their streets.
Oh nein!
The village of Schuld is among the hardest hit. Several homes have collapsed here, and the village is among many with no power and very difficult to access.
Overnight they were upstairs and it was dark because there was no light, no power.
Chancellor Angela Merkel, on a farewell visit to Joe Biden in Washington, described the situation as a catastrophe.
Ich traue die in dieser Katastrophe ihr Leben verloren haben.
I grieve for those who have lost their lives in this disaster. We still don't know the number, but it will be many. Some in the basements of their homes, some as firefighters were trying to bring others to safety. And to their loved ones, my deepest sympathies.
Tief empfundene Anteilnahme.
Across Europe, record rainfall has caused some of the worst flooding in decades. In eastern Belgium, rivers burst their banks and cascaded through towns and cities. Homes and livelihoods destroyed in an instant.
Luckily, I have my sister, but now we've been told that our house could collapse, and so we've had to leave.
In Pepinster, some residents had to be rescued on the back of trucks. Much of the town of Valkenburg in southeast Netherlands has been left underwater too. Homes and businesses inundated, and the fear remains of more rain in the coming days. In Turkey, a major rescue operation is underway after flash floods and landslides in the Black Sea province of Rize. Authorities say many villages are cut off and impossible to reach. And the Swiss city of Lucerne is on high alert, with its lake just centimetres from bursting its banks. Sandbags and inflatable flood barriers are being put in place as the water continues to rise.
The reason for the installation of the inflatable flood barriers was that some forecasts said that the lake level is going to continue to rise and that the magic limit will be reached.
In many parts of Western Germany, rescue services are still searching for those missing, feared swept away by the floods. And the rescue work continues as the rain keeps falling. Michelle Clifford, Sky News, Germany.
Just devastating images out of Germany. We do want to get a check on what's happening here in the U.S. The Morning News Now weather.
Yeah, hi, Bill. What an intro yet again. All this. Hey. It's crazy. Yeah. Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, that video looked like a tsunami video or like the aftermath of like a huge storm surge from a hurricane. I mean, we were able to throw one weather graphic together to kind of show you what happened to this region here in northern Germany. So it was a cutoff low pressure. So the storm system was very slow moving. And if you look at the Cologne area, that's where the horrific flooding was. That's where you saw those pictures of those villages. The rain just didn't stop. I mean, it was just endless and hard, too. So just a horrible recipe. So let's bring it back to the lower 48 and show you the worst weather that we have in our country. Nothing compared to that. We don't have any horrific flooding, but we do have a lot of heavy rain over Missouri. If you're driving Interstate 44 through the Springfield area up to St. Louis, it's raining. And Interstate 70 is not a fun ride this morning either, from St. Louis to Indianapolis and eventually into Ohio. So we're going to track this rain, and guess where it's heading for the weekend? That's right. It's heading for the East Coast again. Woo! All right. So then as we go throughout the Saturday forecast, Saturday morning actually starts out okay. The exception being Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse area, chance for some heavy rain. The eastern seaboard should be okay Saturday morning. If you have any plans, do it quickly, because by the afternoon and evening, thunderstorms widespread all through the region, and that will be a repeat on Sunday. So the heaviest rains, if we're going to get any flash flooding, possibility watch out in Indiana, also Ohio, western New York, and possibility of areas of central New England too. So here's the forecast for today, guys. It's warm, it's hot in the west, big shocker there, and it's going to be a very hot weekend in the interior west. Next hour, I'll have your complete weekend forecast for you, and I know you guys are going to love Sunday. It just looks absolutely perfect for a duck.
I was like, wait, what? That's what you just said.
Looking forward to that, Bill. Thank you.
See you soon.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.